Great. Okay. So the program for this evening is on the screen there. I will initially give a quick summary of our recent Kingfisher Quest project, and then I'm going to hand over to Steve for his presentation, A Season with Kingfishers. So without further ado, Rachel, if you could put the slide forward for me, please. Thank you. Right, so a quick introduction to the Lower Windrush Valley and the Lower Windrush Valley project, as I think we've got quite a few new people on the call today. So the Lower Windrush Valley is in West Oxfordshire, and it covers the Windrush floodplain from Whitney south down to where the Windrush meets the Thames at Newbridge. It's an area that's been extensively modified by minerals extraction over the last 60 years. And we now have 60 gravel pit lakes, as you can see from the map, and more to come over future years as well. So the Lower Windrush Valley project was established in 2001 by Oxfordshire County Council, and that was really in response to the minerals extraction that had already happened and future planning applications that were coming in for more working in the area. So we work with mineral operators, landowners, and local communities on initiatives that strengthen the landscape, enhance biodiversity, and improve public access in the area. Could you skip my slide, please, Rachel? So moving on to Kingfisher Quest, on the 1st of June, we launched our Kingfisher Quest project with the aim of increasing our understanding of numbers and location of kingfishers within the valley, encouraging people to engage with their local water environments, and also informing potential kingfisher habitat enhancements in the future. So during June, July and August, we asked members of the public to notify us if they saw a kingfisher with the date and location and any other sort of interesting information from that sighting, or photographs if they were able to capture one. Next slide, please, Rachel. So what did we find? What were the results? Well, during the 3 months, we had 39 sightings of 46 birds. Sometimes there was 2 or 3 at once. I say 46 birds, and of course that doesn't mean that there are 46 kingfishers in the valley. This was the number of sightings, so obviously the same birds will have been sighted more than once. However, I think if you look at the map there, which shows our results, the green dots represent kingfisher sighting. And we know that kingfisher territories usually cover 1 to 5 kilometres of river. So we can assume that there are several pairs within the valley. Nearly 50% of our sightings were reported in a relatively small area between Langle Common and Whitney Lake and Country Park. So for those of you who don't know where that is, if you look towards the north of the map, you can see there's a sort of higher density of green dots up there. That's likely to reflect the number of footpaths and how well used the footpaths are, as well as kingfishers. But I think, it's a good hotspot, a good place to suggest if you're hoping to see a kingfisher, then that is where I would suggest you go. We did take a look at historical records in advance of starting the survey. So we looked at all of the kingfisher records from the Thames Valley Environmental Records Centre, and they showed us that kingfishers have historically been present throughout the valley. And we also have several years' worth of records from our nature reserves, so Rushy Common and Stanlake Common nature reserves. And they show us that kingfishers are regular visitors to both sites. So there were several sightings every year for the last 10 years or so at both sites. Unfortunately, as many of you will know, the bird hides are closed at the moment and have been for several months. So unfortunately, with the survey timing, we haven't actually got a record from either site as part of the survey. So one of the other things to come out of the survey that was quite interesting was I had quite a few emails, a little bit on social media, communications suggesting that kingfisher numbers have declined in the valley in recent years. Now, our survey doesn't enable us to make any conclusions on a decline or increase in numbers, But there, I think we can sort of certainly say there is anecdotal evidence of fewer kingfishers in recent years. So how does that link to water quality? Water quality, sorry. What does that tell us? So we know that there are ongoing issues and growing concern, particularly about poor water quality in the River Windrush and its impact on people and on wildlife, obviously including kingfishers. So the results of this survey show that there are several kingfishers present in the valley despite issues, but this may well be partly due to their ability to take advantage of food sources in the nearby lakes and ponds as well. And as you can see, there are many in the valley. Could you go to my next slide, please, Rachel? So here's our couple of photographs. So I mentioned at the beginning that I had asked people to send photographs if they were able to capture any, and we actually only had 2. I mean, they're quick birds, aren't they? So tricky to get photos of. So both of these photographs are actually from Whitney Lake and Country Park, and they were sent in by Adam Parker and Duncan Wigham. So they're 2 rather nice photos. I quite like the one on the fishing rod at the bottom. I think that's rather good. We go to the next slide, please, Rachel. Right, so what's next? Well, the data is to be added to the Thames Valley Environmental Records Centre database. So that will be now part of their database and can be accessed by people requesting data from them. We'll also be producing a summary of the survey and a map of the results, as you've seen. And that's going to be published on our website and shared via our social media later this week. We will use the results to help us identify areas for potential improvements in the future. And then we've got repeat survey with a question mark here because we don't have anything in the diary yet, but there's definitely potential to repeat this, possibly in 5 years' time. It will be quite interesting to compare the number of sightings sent in and the locations, and also an opportunity for further engagement with the public, angling clubs, schools. There was quite a few groups that we would have liked to target this year, and unfortunately we weren't able to because of COVID and the schools being closed and all those issues. Right, so that's the end of my presentation. So before we move on to Steve, if there's any questions, let me open the chat box. So please use the chat box, and if you've got any questions, please put them in there. I can then respond, and then we'll move on to Steve. So at the moment, I think I can just see, oh no, lots of questions coming. Okay. Are the sites near Whitney due for development? I don't believe any of the sightings came from sites that are due to have development on. I mean, obviously a lot of the sightings were on sort of footpaths or on the river. So there may well be development nearby, but you wouldn't necessarily expect development exactly where that is. Do you cover the entire area? Or, sorry, do you cover the entire area, or do the green dots only represent where people went? Well, that's a really interesting question. So obviously something that is really important to note about this survey is it was primarily to sort of find out about where kingfishers were, but also a public engagement tool. So we're very aware that when doing the survey, obviously we asked people to send us sightings when they were out on their walks or leisure activities in the valley. So a lot of the sightings will be based around where there are public footpaths. Any evidence of breeding? I had, I think, 2 of the sightings along the Thames. People had said they thought they saw sort of nesting, but that wasn't sort of part of what we were trying to understand from this survey. Oh gosh, lots of questions. I'll do a few more. Will this talk be available to see online at a later date? Yes, assuming the recording's working, it will be. When you publish the survey results, will the historical data be included? Thank you, Miranda. Potentially, I think there may well be issues sharing some of the data. About half of the data that TVERC held on kingfisher sightings from in the valley was data that had been submitted by the Lower Windrush Valley Project. So that's our data, and I can share that. I think probably the remainder of the records, there would probably be issues sharing, unfortunately. But there was a sort of good range across the valley in that previous data that I'd seen. Are you making comparisons with other data in Oxfordshire or elsewhere? Not at the moment, no, but that would be really interesting if anybody is, if there's been a similar survey carried out somewhere else. I'm not aware of one, but that would certainly be, we could do interesting comparisons. Right, okay, I think in a moment we'll move on to Steve's presentation. I am just going to address Fiona's question about the bird hides, mostly because I know there's probably, I get quite a lot of questions about our bird hides at the moment, so there's probably several people wondering about us reopening them. So she said, why are the bird hides closed? They can't be a high-risk place for COVID-19. So at the moment, the bird hides are still closed. I've been closely keeping an eye on government guidance and also seeing sort of what other organisations are doing. Some other organisations have started to reopen the hides, some haven't. The issue that I was sort of having was around cleaning the hides. I'm hoping to get that sorted out shortly. So hopefully you will see the bird hides being reopened soon, but anybody that is a key holder will get a message about that. Right, okay, I think I'm going to hand over to Steve now for his presentation. So Steve, do you want to share your screen and kick off?
Hi everybody, I hope you can see a perky kingfisher.
Yes, we can, Steve.
Cool. So my name's Steve Midgley. I live in Halifax in West Yorkshire. I'm a bit of a part-time wildlife photographer. I am a self-confessed kingfisher addict. I absolutely love them. I saw my first one about 10 years ago. We just got a new dog, so I was doing lots of walks on riverbanks and saw a blue flash whiz down the river. I thought, that's a kingfisher. I'm going to take a picture of it. Surely it can't be that hard. Well, it actually took me over a year to get a picture I was happy with, well, almost happy with. If any of you are photographers, you'll know that you're never completely happy. So when I'm out and about now, I've even started trying to think like a kingfisher when I'm near water. And I find myself looking at branches on trees, outcrops, and thinking where I'd perch or where I'd fish from. So I'm always checking branch height above the water, speed of the flow of the water, and looking for areas where fish might be congregating. Very sad, I know, but that's me. So I live about 5 minutes away from the River Calder, which flows through a little village called Copley. And down there I've discovered what I believe to be the perfect kingfisher branch. Here it is. Unfortunately, until last summer, not the summer gone, summer before, I'd only ever seen a juvenile dipper sat on my branch. It's the perfect height above the water, it's slow moving in water, there's loads of little fish about, but I'd never seen a kingfisher on it. Every time I go down to the river, it's the first branch I look at. And like I say, kingfishers think differently to me. Finally, a kingfisher landed on it. I was down on the riverbank and it just all kicked off. There was 3 kingfishers flying around, up and down, chasing each other, and they were actually using my branch. to land on. One even landed right above my head. They didn't seem to notice I was there, and it was quite obvious it was two males fighting over a female. Here's my branch in use. Every time one of them landed, the other male would fly in, chasing it off, and it was just carnage. Kingfisher heaven. They were everywhere. It was obviously kingfisher love triangle. So if you think Mike, Ken, and Deirdre, just better looking and more colourful. Anyway, so during a lull in the action, I decided I'd go and try and get round the other side of the river, nearer to this branch. And as soon as I got there, I just sat down, and this male landed right in front of me on my branch. They continued chasing each other up and down for a while, and then it all calmed down. There was two birds left, and it looked like the female had finally chosen her suitor for the season. In case you don't know how to spot the difference between kingfishers, males have an all black beak, like this chap here, and females have lipstick, so they have an orange tinge on their lower mandible. So over the coming months, these two lovebirds became my passion. I was down there morning, noon, and night, and I was putting out perches where I thought would be a good place for me to photograph them. Kingfishers are curious birds. If you put a perch out, they will come and sit on it eventually, and check out whether it's a good place to fish or just catch the sunshine. But as the male, he's on the perch that I'd put out. I'm just hidden. I'm about 10, 12 feet away, basically in a bush, right on the riverbank with my feet in the water. No camouflage or anything. I'm just sat quiet, not moving, still. The only thing he took any notice of was the shutter on my camera, and you can see here he's staring directly at me. I always feel weird when they look straight at you. Anyway, he just didn't seem bothered, and he sat there preening, having a scratch, and this perch really became his go-to perch. The female very rarely landed on it, and if she did, she was away in a flash. But the male just loved it. So earlier in the year, this is last winter, we'd had floods on this stretch of the river, and I spent quite a lot of time in the water, on the banks, collecting the rubbish and the detritus that had been washed down in the floods. It was pretty bad. There was all sorts of plastic waste, there's tyres, there was all sorts, you name it. It got washed down. A bit further down the river on a local nature reserve, there were 3 fridges got washed down. It was not good. So I say I spent a lot of time cleaning up my particular stretch of the river. And during one clear up, I found a really nice branch. I thought, I'll wedge this into the bank. Hopefully the kingfishers will use this. So this is the branch that I wedged in, and this is a composite shot. So it's three quick photos of the male kingfisher coming in with a fish, and he would land on this perch all the time, always with a fish, always calling, and he was trying to lure the female in for what's known as the fish pass. He started off, the fish were quite small when he started off, and she certainly wasn't bothered. She wasn't interested in these little tiddlers he was offering her. But it didn't mean everybody was uninterested. And one day, or one time, a robin dropped in. I don't know if he was attracted by the fish or the red breast, but it was quite funny to see them. If you notice, the fish is getting bigger. And finally she landed, came in he offered her the fish, lots of calling, lots of peeping. Oops, he offered her the fish, and finally she took it. So this sort of seals the deal. This means they're a pair. They're going to breed. And look how proud and happy he looks. Chest out, back straight, absolute star of the show. So not long after this, I actually realised that the male had built the nest right above this branch. So I'll just skip back a couple. So if you imagine up this right-hand branch, about 3 foot above the branch, is where he dug the nest site. So as soon as I realised that there's a Schedule 1 bird, I backed away from this site and left them to it. Didn't want to disturb them and let them carry on. So this is the male looking for fish. And they were both, male and female, constantly up and down the river with fish in the mouth heading towards the nest site. So it was obvious there were chicks in the nest, and I would say there was a constant stream of to-ing and fro-ing with fish. Now the way to tell, quick easy way to tell if they're feeding chicks is to look at which way around the fish is in their mouth. So if the fish is head to head, eyeball to eyeball, that's going down its neck. That's dinner. The kingfisher is going to eat that. Poor little stickleback. He's putting up a good fight with his spines. If, however, the head is pointing away from the kingfisher, that's going to a chick or to the female. Most likely, these were going to the chick. Well, the chicks. Excuse me, I've got a really tickly cough. The good thing about putting out your own perches as well, photography-wise, is you can pick nice mossy, lichen-covered ones like this one, which again, you regularly use this perch. So kingfishers nest in a tunnel dug into the riverbank. It can be up to 1.5 meters long, and they can lay between 6 and 7 eggs. In a good year, they can have 3 broods, although 2 is the usual number. The chicks are fed in turn, and they queue up. So there'll be a line of however many chicks there are. The parent will come in, feed the one at the front of the queue. That chick will then go to the back of the queue. The next one will move forward. And so there's no, apparently, I haven't actually seen this, I've been told about this, but apparently there's no squabbling in the nest. As soon as they get a fish, they'll then move back to the back of the queue. Now, when it comes to fledging, if you read the RSPB site or any site about kingfishers, they usually tell you that once they fledge, there's a 3 or 4 day window, and the parents will teach them how to fish, teach them where to fish, and keep feeding them while they learn. Once that 3 or 4 days is up, the parents will aggressively chase the juveniles away, and they'll either begin the next brood or split up and go back to their solitary existence on their territory until the following spring. So, excuse me. So I knew they were busy feeding chicks in the nest. One evening when I went down, before I got anywhere near the riverbank, I could hear lots of kingfishers, and it was quite obvious that the chicks had fledged. So when I got down there, this is on my branch. This is a juvenile. He's busy calling for food. There were now five kingfishers flying around on the different perches. Youngsters were shouting, peeping at the parents, letting them know where they were. So every time the parents caught a fish, they could locate one of the 3 to feed. This one. So this is the male, and he's feeding one of the juveniles. You can tell things to look for on the juveniles. They're much duller colour. I think of them more of a pastel chalky version of the parents. They have a little white tip on the end of the beak. They don't have any of the red lipstick colouring, so it's hard to differentiate sex of the juveniles. And they also have muddy feet. So if you look, you can see the males, the parent birds, bright orange feet, and the juveniles have muddy boots on. Luckily enough, I got all four of the five, and they're all on my branch. So the male's over here, he's just brought a fish in that he's fed to this lucky chap here, and the other two are just giving him grief. As soon as one of the parents arrived with food, they'd be squabbling, they'd be grabbing at whoever got the fish. So here's all three. Chap in the middle is the lucky one this time round. A week later, they were still around. The 3 or 4 day window had gone. I wasn't seeing much of the female. I think perhaps it was the end of their breeding season and she'd gone her own way. The male was still around, but this is one of the juveniles. You can see his white tip on his beak and little brown feet, but his colours are coming through much brighter, more iridescent, more like a grown-up kingfisher. Now this is a bit of interesting behaviour. So if you see a kingfisher that looks like it's gagging, it's probably about to throw up a pellet. So like owls regurgitate bits of the voles that they can't eat, kingfishers do it with fish. So this is a series of photos of one. So you can then see the pellet in her mouth, just about to come out, and then spitting it off to the side. I've tried to find these pellets. I've never found one yet. Even when I've seen one land in grass, I couldn't find it. They usually obviously land in the water and dissolve. But yeah, if anybody asks you what do owls and kingfishers have in common, they both regurgitate pellets. This is the male catching himself a fish, dispatching it. Here's one of the fledglings, white tip, muddy boots. This is like over a week later, they were still coming back, but they were really wary. They would quite often sit like this, looking all around, waiting for Dad to come and see them off. There's another one, but you can see now that they're proper kingfishers now. Full colours come through, and they'll up the business. Here's Dad with another fish. I think I'll just finish off with a couple of videos I've got. These are taken at a friend of mine who's got photography hide for kingfishers, and this should just show you one fishing or catching dinner. He was feeding five. They had 5 juveniles fledged that year, and then finally, this is just having a shake and a preen. Beautiful, aren't they? Absolutely stunning. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've got a website if you'd like to go and have a look any more of my pictures. There's a lot more there than just kingfishers. And I also wrote a book about my first year trying to get that elusive photograph. It's available on Amazon. It's either available as a Kindle download or there is a paperback version, but it's very expensive. Unfortunately, I can't control the pricing on Amazon. Any proceeds from sales of it go, I work with a local police early intervention charity. We do work with kids that are at risk I teach them a bit of photography and stuff about wildlife. We've got a lake, we've got a wood. We will hopefully be having, there are kingfishers on the lake, and hopefully we're going to be building a hide next year so the kids can photograph them. And I'm working on the next book, A Year Looking for Otters. So I'll let Lucy know when it's out. Thank you very much.